Nivritte sarva dukkhanam. It is the cessation of all suffering. What is the cessation of all suffering? Our real nature. If only we would know ourselves as we truly are. So in Indian philosophy, when we discuss suffering, one way is to talk about the three kinds of suffering, one classification. Adhyatmika, which refers to the body-mind, suffering which comes from one's own body-mind, illness, physical, depression, unhappiness, mental. This is suffering from one's own body-mind. This is adhyatmika dukkha. It's one kind of suffering. The second kind of suffering is adhibhautika, suffering which comes from other living beings. In classical texts, they'll talk about the suffering caused by the mosquito and the tiger. So neither mosquitoes and tigers here, but suffering caused by other beings. Maybe this annoying person who's your neighbor, or maybe your boss in the office, or somebody who causes you suffering. So suffering caused by other living beings, human beings and other beings. And finally, adhidaivika dukkha, the suffering caused by natural factors, hurricanes and earthquakes and too much cold or too much heat or whatever. Three kinds of suffering: natural suffering, suffering from other living beings, and our own internal body-mind suffering. Of course, you may say that, isn't it true whether it's suffering caused by nature or suffering caused by other people? Ultimately, it has to come to my body and mind. It has to affect me physically too, or mentally, to make me suffer. That's true. That's true. Ultimately, suffering is at the level of the body and mind. In fact, ultimately at the level of the mind. It's only when the mind recognizes suffering, I say, I am in pain. But just for the sake of classification, three kinds of suffering. And it says, sarva dukkhanam, all suffering comes to an end. When we realize that we are this fourth, we are this pure consciousness. But this has to be understood carefully. All suffering comes to an end. So I'm prone to headaches. So will my headaches be cured when I'm enlightened? I'm very poor. So will my poverty all my debts will be paid off, my credit card debts and all, when I'm enlightened? Or there's certain things which I want in life, money and fame and success, and I'm unhappy because I don't get them. So when I'm enlightened, will all those problems be taken care of? No. I'm sorry to this. Some of you looked expectant. Maybe. Maybe. No. The Buddha put it very beautifully. He said the nature of suffering. What is the nature of suffering? He said, it's like a man hit by an arrow. Imagine the burning and the stinging sensation, you're hit by an arrow, and immediately afterwards hit by another arrow. So imagine the suffering. 2 arrows. What is the first arrow? The first arrow is what the world throws at you. Whatever happens in the world and what happens to you in the world, in your community, in your personal relationships, in your health, whatever is happening in the world, that's the first arrow. The second arrow is much worse. It's our reaction to it all. That is the real suffering. That's the real suffering. The real suffering is how we react. And the Buddha says what he is going to teach, that means the whole teaching of Buddhism, that will remove the suffering caused by the second arrow. Not the first one. Very gentleman-like he says, I cannot do anything about the first arrow. That comes by our karma. And for that, there are worldly remedies. Ill health, you can practice Hatha Yoga. If you have money problems, you can borrow. No, don't borrow. That's a very New York solution too. So there are worldly solutions for all our worldly problems for the first arrow, and none of them work. That's the thing. None of them really work. If they really worked, if I have ill health and there's some short solution, then I should be cured of ill health forever. Not at all. Nobody ever has been. If I'm hungry and if I eat, has hunger gone forever? Of course not. Afternoon, brunch, then dinner, then next morning. So it doesn't go away. There is no final solution for suffering in the world, the first arrow, and there is no absolutely guaranteed solution. There is no complete fulfillment in this world. So the first arrow is going to come. As long as we are alive, because of our past karma, the first arrow is going to come. But what we can deal with is the second arrow. Where is the maximum suffering? Almost all the suffering is caused by the second arrow. We know this. In life, we see people who have got maybe everything in life, very unhappy. Who have hardly anything in life, bubbling with joy. It's not so much what happens to us in life. There was one of the greatest scientific thinkers of our time, Stephen Hawking, absolutely paralyzed and confined to his wheelchair. Another scientist, so this is physically devastated, body is not functioning at all, but mind is brilliant. His mental problems are worse. Not necessarily. There was this book and a movie, The Beautiful Mind. John Nash, the mathematician, deeply schizophrenic. He won the Nobel Prize. Of course, for most of the work he did beforehand, but even then he continued to be productive. He was still working in Princeton University. So even with the devastated man, and all of this is not original to me. I remember I attended a medical conference where a psychiatrist, he was giving a talk, and he was saying that in spite of the worst hurdles, and he gave an example of Stephen Hawking and John Nash, one where the body is devastated, another where the mind is devastated, and they reach some of the heights of human achievement. So it's possible. And the opposite is also possible. Everything is perfect. Perfect health, youth, money, fame, and everything is there. Just ruins its life. And there are examples like that. Maybe commits suicide or something like that. So the first arrow is coming to every one of us. And the second one is what we have to deal with. In that same medical conference, a doctor was talking about pain. And he drew 3 concentric circles, small circle, middle circle, and bigger, wider circle. He said pain, the suffering caused by pain, 20% of it is actually physical. Actually what we feel, the inner circle, 20%. The acute pain which we feel. And then the middle circle is the distress caused by pain. It's going to hurt, expecting, even before it starts hurting. Or worn down by continuous chronic pain. That is the middle circle. That's psychological. And then the outer circle is the social distress caused by it. I can't go to a function, I can't go to a party, I can't do this or that. I'm so disadvantaged by my pain. So he says, notice, 20% is actually physically felt. 80% of our suffering is mental, psychological. And he says, painkillers. He said, I'll let you into a dirty little secret of the pharmaceutical industry. Painkillers try, and unsuccessfully at that, to address that 20%. And they can never do anything about the other 80%. It's the second arrow. The second arrow which the Buddha talked about. So the real suffering is there. And when we realize this nature that I am this pure consciousness beyond all suffering. Where is suffering? At the level of the body. It's an object to me. It comes and goes. It's not me. Even when it is there, I can honestly say, yes, there is a pain, but it's not me. I can see it like a thing here. There was Swami Shivananda, one of the, in our order, he was the second president of the Ramakrishna order, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. So in his old age, when he was the president, he had many problems, asthma and other problems in his body. So he's the head of the order. Some monk came and one day asked him, they had heard that last night he had been unable to sleep. There was uneasiness in the body and pain and all. Next morning, one of the monks asked him, Swami, Maharaj, they say Maharaj, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. But we heard that you were so unwell, and last night we heard, oh, you mean the body, not fine at all, not well at all. You see, very naturally, I'm fine. Oh, the body, oh, it's no good. I've seen many of these examples. So you can clearly see it's not escapist. You're clearly aware of the problems in the body. And the doctors are doing their best and therapies are going on. But I'm also at a deep level, I know I'm all right. It's perfectly all right. It's the movie. It's a tragedy playing out on the screen, but the screen is not feeling tragic. So that is nivritte sarva dukkhanam, cessation of all sufferings. When you realize I am that pure consciousness. How does it work? If I know that I'm the witness consciousness, how does it help me to transcend pain? How does it cure the suffering caused by the second arrow? One way, three ways of looking at it. One way is the very nature of consciousness. Consider light. It's like light. Prakasha Swarupa. Light, Prakasha in Sanskrit means illumination or light. It illumines everything, but it is not affected by the things it illumines. It can illumine the water there. So much water. The light, sunlight falls on it and reveals it to you. But the sunlight doesn't become wet because of the water. It can reveal the terrible fires burning in Australia. But the light is not affected by the fires. It can reveal something very dirty, maybe water in a drain. It can reveal the pure water of the Ganges. But the light itself is not made impure by the water in the drain. It's not made pure by the water in the Ganges. No, it is not affected by what it reveals. Consciousness is like light. I'm not saying consciousness is suddenly start glowing when you become enlightened. I mean, you may look, your face may glow, but that's a different kind of glow, not like glowing in the dark radium or something like that. So that consciousness, it illumines. And what it illumines, it's not affected by it. If there is a pain in the body, it illumines, it reveals there's a pain in the body. But the enlightened person will not say, I am in pain. I am the witness of a pain in the body. You may say that's a strange way of looking at it. It's not strange. It's the actual fact. What we do normally is, we do not think of ourselves as consciousness. We think of ourselves as this. And the moment there's a pain here, ouch, I am in pain. Here's a pain, and I am this, so I am in pain. Depression, unhappiness. Oh, I am so unhappy. Are you? Isn't it that you are aware of this deeply unhappy feeling rising in the mind? Yes. Before this it was there, after this it will not be there. You, the consciousness, are you unhappy or are you aware of unhappiness? You're aware of unhappiness. But you in yourself, the awareness is not unhappy. So, because your nature is like light, in the evening, when we do the arati here, the last thing the Swami chants is, Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. It's a beautiful mantra from the Kathopanishad. That is not illumined by the sun. There the moon does not shine, nor lightning. What to speak of this mortal fire? Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. That shining, everything else shines. Tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. By its light, all that is here is lit up. That shining means you shining. Everything else shines. Everything else shines means your mind, first of all, your mind is lit up. Then through the mind, the body and the sense organs are lit up. And through this body-mind, you light up the entire world and you experience the world. But you shining, everything else shines afterwards. By your light, everything in this universe is lit up. Swami, you're saying nice things about me, but isn't it a bit too much? By my light? No, there's so many lights here. True. Close your eyes. Where are all those lights? They are lights only when you see them. And your seeing is also there only because your mind is behind your eyes. And your mind also works because you, the consciousness, are lighting up the mind. It's worth thinking about. Your nature is like consciousness, is like light. That's one reason why you are not affected by the things that you illumine. Just as light is not affected by the things it illumines, you are not affected by the things you illumine. Another reason why you are not, another way of looking at it, how do you transcend suffering? Asanga. You are not, nothing sticks to you. I mentioned it yesterday. Nothing sticks to you. When you reveal something, it does not stick to you. whether it's a person, an object, a place, an experience, a pain, a pleasure, a taste, a smell, a touch, something you see or hear, none of them stick to you. They come and go. You shine. So even the worst of suffering does not stick to you. And if it does not stick to you, it has no relationship with you. It only appears, dances in your light, and disappears. When it comes, you can say hello. If it's a pain, you can't really say welcome. It would not be very honest. But you can at least say hello, there you are again. It'll stay for some time, and it'll disappear and go, all right, let it go. You are asanga, unattached. To what? To anything in this world. That is another reason why your nature transcends pain. Another reason why, the third one, how you transcend pain, satya mithya. The reality is not affected by the appearance. The rope does not become poisonous because you imagine it, mistake it to be a snake. The desert does not become wet because the mirage water appears there. Shankaracharya says, all the water in the mirage is not enough to wet one grain of sand in the desert. That which is false cannot affect that which is real. This entire world, what is the world? Waking world, dream world, and deep sleep. None of it affects you, the witness consciousness, because it is not of the same order of reality which you are. In Vedanta, you are paramarthika reality, the absolute reality. And this world is called vyavaharika, transactional reality. It appears, shines, and disappears in your light. It cannot affect you. The false cannot affect the real. You say, no, Swami, people are traumatized by suffering. What is traumatized? The mind. The mind is traumatized. But you are the witness of the pre-traumatized mind and the traumatized mind. And in between the traumatized mind, there will be gaps when you are not aware of the trauma. And then when the traumatized mind goes to sleep, you are aware of the absolute blankness and peacefulness of the resting mind. When it wakes up, it may again remember the trauma. It wakes up suddenly aware, oh, I'm traumatized, supposed to be horrible. I'm in trauma. Oh, I'm horrible. Then it starts working again. But you, the consciousness, you are not traumatized. You never were. So, because you are like light, therefore you are not affected by suffering. Because you are unattached, asanga, therefore you are not affected by suffering. Because you are real and the suffering body-mind are appearances in you, therefore you are not affected by suffering. Ishana, Prabhuravyaya. So these words which are used, Ishana normally refers to God. Prabhu is another word which refers to God. But in this case, it refers to the Turiya, the pure consciousness, which we are. Shankaracharya comments, here the Lord means that one which is beyond all suffering. Because you are beyond all suffering, therefore you are the Lord, the fourth pure consciousness. Prabhu also here refers not to God, but to you, the pure consciousness. Avyaya, each of these words, very deep. Avyaya means unchanging. So traditionally there are 6 kinds of changes talked about. Shadavikara, or 6 modifications, 6 kinds of changes. One is Jayate, birth. So we are born, the body is born. And having been born now comes into existence. What was not there, I did not exist as this person, as this body. Now I exist as this person. That's another change. Jayate asti. So second change is, I come into being as this, after being born. Third is vardhate, I develop. Baby and child and teenager, I'm developing, growing. The body is growing and changing. The next change is viparinamate. It reaches a plateau of development, middle age, and you continue at that level. And then begins apakshiyate, deterioration, inevitable. I'm sorry, but inevitable. No matter how much, if you do a lot of hatha yoga and gluten free, then it will be managed. It will be managed. The decline will be a managed decline, which is good. Common sense decline, you should do that. If you have a car, why will you not take care of it? If you don't take care of it, it will fall apart faster. But we cannot stop it. Nobody can stop it. Old age will come. That which seemed effortless when you are young did not take any maintenance. Now this, you can still have the same thing, but it takes a lot of maintenance, a lot of work. One doctor said, Swami, now with the latest modern technology in medicine, we can almost guarantee that you will live long, but we cannot guarantee you will live well. So an inevitable decline comes, apakshiyate, and finally death. Inevitable. For all that is born, death is certain. So nashyati. 6 changes. And it says this consciousness, the fourth, is free of all of these 6 changes. It's not born. It's not that it did not exist and comes into existence. It's not that it develops. The body develops. The mind matures. But this consciousness, it's not that it develops. It's always the constant shining light, like that. It's not that it matures. It's not that it deteriorates, and not that it dies. Free of the 6 changes.